We resolve actions in role-playing games by making checks, right? I mean, I'm not actually a master swordsman, but I can use my attack bonus to slay dragons. And I'm not actually a master thief, but I can use my pick-lock skill to open a door. So even though I'm not as smart as my wizard with 20 intelligence, I should be able to make an intelligence check to solve a riddle, right? But if so, why does that feel so unsatisfying? Think about a crossword puzzle. It's an interesting challenge. But is it still a challenge if the answers have already been written down in the grid? And if it's not a challenge, is it interesting? Would you be entertained reading someone else's solved crossword puzzle? It's the same thing when the GM gives you a riddle and then also tells you the answer. We can also think of this in terms of the Czege Principle, which was coined by designer Paul Czege as a way of thinking about how we create challenge and frame scenes in role-playing and storytelling games. When one person is the author of both the character's adversity and its resolution, play isn't fun. In the case of a riddle or puzzle, the resolution is obviously figuring out the answer. If the interaction at the table looks like this, like the sun in a snowstorm, I must be broken before I can be used. Give me an intelligence check. 18. The answer is an egg. Then the player has been excluded from participating. What you want to do is engage the players through their characters. If you're only engaging the characters, then the players are no longer playing the game. And this remains true even if we, muddy up the middle step a bit by requiring the player to say something like, I'll make an intelligence check. Okay, but what if you or the player want to make the intelligence check? Now, there are generally a couple of reasons why you might want to do this. Maybe the PCs are stuck, and they need a solution to the riddle or puzzle before the adventure can continue. Or maybe the players want to play a character who's smarter than they are. Just like some players want to play a character who can win a heavyweight title bout, even though they absolutely can't do that in real life, you'll have players who want to solve riddles and puzzles that would be impossible for them to do themselves. Now, fortunately, there are a couple techniques you can use to accomplish these goals without making riddles and puzzles meaningless. First, you can make the riddle non-essential. For example, let's go back to Gandalf at the doors of Moria.
It reads, "The doors of Durin, Lord of Moria. Speak, friend, and enter."
What do you suppose that means?
Oh, it's quite simple. If you want a friend, you speak the password and the doors will open.
In order to open the door, they have to figure out the password. There's only one solution. But that's not the only way to open the door, is it? I mean, if this were a D&D group, they could break it down. They could trick the lake monster into breaking it down for them. Or they could prepare and cast a knock spell. It's also not the only way into Moria. They could, for example, try to climb the mountain and enter through one of the windows or ventilation shafts. Plus, they technically don't even need to get into Moria at all. They could go back and try to cross Caradros again. They could go south through the Gap of Rohan. They could even abandon their overland journey entirely, retreat to a western port, and sail to Gondor. This is similar to the 3-clue rule. If there are multiple paths to a goal, then having a puzzle the players can't figure out blocking one of those paths isn't a big deal. So if the reason you were making the check to solve the riddle was because you felt compelled to force an answer on the players, making sure that the riddle or puzzle isn't load-bearing for the scenario, and also being open to player suggestions for how they might route around the puzzle, sidesteps the problem entirely. Speaking of the 3-clue rule, though, let's put a spin on our earlier example of unsatisfying play and consider a different type of puzzle. Lord Arthur de Altmont has been murdered! Give me an intelligence check. 18. Bob did it. I mean, that's clearly ridiculous, right? But nevertheless, a mystery investigation scenario will almost always feature the players using their characters' skills to investigate crime scenes. In A Study in Scarlet, for example, Arthur Conan Doyle demonstrates Sherlock Holmes' brilliance by having him identify ash he finds in the corner of a room. And we can easily imagine something like that happening at the game table, too. You find some ash in the corner of the room. Give me a chemistry check. 18. You identify it as coming from a Trichinopoly cigar. So what's the difference? Well, what it boils down to is that these skill checks, or other mechanics, are delivering clues. But it's still the players who use those clues and take the rewarding final step of figuring out what they mean. If we go back to Czege's principle, the clues are still part of the problem that the GM is presenting, like the clues in a crossword puzzle. But the players are still the ones ultimately resolving the problem by finding the solution. And we can do the same thing for a riddle. When someone playing a super genius like Sherlock Holmes or Reed Richards or Wile E. Coyote wants to make an IQ check to solve a puzzle, we instead give them a clue. When we're talking about a murder mystery, the distinction between clue and conclusion can feel fairly obvious. If we're talking about myth-like puzzles or Gollum-style riddle battles, on the other hand, it can be a little harder to figure out clues that aren't just the solution. Now, this is often more art than science, and will be heavily dependent on the specific riddle or puzzle in question, but a trick I frequently find useful is to break the riddle or puzzle apart conceptually, and then give clues that only make one part of the riddle or puzzle more explicit. Take the simple riddle we used before, for example. Like the sun in a snowstorm, I must be broken before I can be used. We could look at the first part of the riddle, like a sun in a snowstorm, and say, you're pretty sure the sun and the snowstorm are referring to different colors. Since our clue doesn't include any information from the second half of the riddle, what needs to be broken before it can be used, we can be certain that our clue about yellow in white, no matter how explicit the clue may be, won't give the whole answer away. Now, something else we can learn from mysteries is that you can also deliver clues to riddles or puzzles diegetically. In other words, like Indiana Jones using his father's journal in The Last Crusade, the PCs can piece together lore and rumor, and perhaps investigate the area around the puzzle for hints to a puzzle solution. If there are a bunch of large stone pillars, each etched with a strange rune, for example, then researching the runes in the library might be useful for identifying which runes are related to each other. Or searching around the pillar might discover scrape marks on the floor, indicating that the pillars have been moved before. Or a giant slayer's journal might describe the relevant rules of Brobdingnagian chess. And some of these, of course, might also be things that a successful arcana or giant lore check would recall instead. Just like you should make an investigate check to recall DSCRYB, the sponsor of today's video. DSCRYB is the award-winning tabletop role-playing game publisher of lush descriptions, immersive sounds, and interactive maps. Whether you're looking for a party of dark elf mercenaries or thrilling music to accompany their inevitable betrayal, click the link below to check out DSCRYB's free resources, and let their team of talented writers, composers, and illustrators help you to run the perfect campaign. Oh, while you're down there, don't forget to make a perception check to spot the subscribe button, and a dexterity saving throw to hit it before it's too late. Good gaming. This is Justin Alexander, and I'll see you at the table.